Good afternoon. Welcome to Northeast Ohio Medical University. My name is Randon Welton. I am the Margaret Clark Morgan Chair of Psychiatry here at Northeast Ohio Medical University at NeoMed. Thank you for joining us today, both on the NeoMed campus and those who are joining virtually online for this very special event. You're all very welcome to the 7th Annual Drs. Fred and Penny Frese Lecture on behalf of the PEG Foundation, Northeast Ohio Medical University, the Department of Psychiatry, and our coordinating centers of excellence. This lecture series is a platform for educating and sharing the adversity, triumph, challenges, and most of all, the stories of people who have experienced serious mental illness and made their way into recovery. Each lecturer brings their own lived experience and their own perspective on the treatment that they've received, and all of them have gone on to become advocates and educators for better care for those who are experiencing serious mental illness and for their families. Dr. Fred Frese believed that people with serious mental illness can live a meaningful and productive life and can manage their illness when given the right access to treatment and the right support. And in Dr. Frese's own words, my purpose is to assist individuals who are in recovery from these serious mental illnesses be able to reintegrate back into society and to not be ashamed of their disorders. The NeoMed Department of Psychiatry and the PEG Foundation share Dr. Frese's vision, and the department aspires to be a national model for disseminating a continuum of integrated treatment services that promote recovery and improve the lives of individuals with schizophrenia and other serious mental illnesses. For those who may not be familiar with us, the NeoMed Department of Psychiatry includes 3 different coordinating centers of excellence: the Criminal Justice Coordinating Center of Excellence, the Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health, and the Best Practices in Schizophrenia Treatment Center, the BEST Center. All 3 coordinating centers of excellence work with multiple partners across the state and across the nation to disseminate best mental health practices in community-based mental health treatment. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Center of Excellence encourages Ohio's communities to forge collaborations between the mental health and criminal justice systems to develop effective programs that engage people with mental disorders in treatment and to divert or deflect them from jail or prison. Our Deflection Initiative is the newest program and works with the Ohio Deflection Association and with deflection and quick response teams from across the state to provide consultation and technical assistance to build a network that engages in best practices and in pre-arrest diversion for the people who have survived opiate and other overdoses. The Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health promotes a comprehensive approach to promote safety, mental health, and academic success at colleges and universities across the state. The Best Practices in Schizophrenia Treatment Center, the BEST Center, provides expert training, consultation, program evaluation, advocacy, and public education to accelerate the dissemination and use of evidence-based and promising practices for the treatment of schizophrenia and other serious mental illnesses. I think there's it. These 3 coordinating centers of excellence do this work in collaboration with people with lived experience, with their families, with their friends, with the PEG Foundation, with the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and with NAMI Ohio and their affiliates, and with numerous other local, state, regional, and national partners. We are delighted that so many representatives of these organizations have joined us in person and are joining us online today. I would now like to introduce one of our most significant and long-lasting partners, or a representative from the PEG Foundation. I'm going to turn the speaking over to Rick Keller, the President and CEO of the PEG Foundation.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Randy. PEG's Foundation was grateful to be here with our partners at NeoMed, and it's one of the first partnerships, one of the first acts when I was hired as president of PEG's Foundation was to come and announce the chair in psychiatry. And I want to recognize Dr. Mark Munitz, who's here. You can just wave your hand, you don't have to stand up, who's the original chair in psychiatry that Randy now currently holds for a little bit. And we're grateful to you, Mark, and you were a super close friend of both Fred and Penny. And it was really through your inspiration that the NeoMed Coordinating Centers of Excellence created this lecture series back in 2018. to honor the late Dr. Fred Frese and his wife, Dr. Penny Frese. And I'd like to extend a very special welcome to one of the two people that are pictured up here on the top left of the screen, Dr. Penny Frese. Penny, I'm going to ask you to stand up if you don't mind. Fred and Penny were married over 40 years. They were partners in marriage, raising a family, and advocating for people with mental illness. Stories from people like Fred and Brandon, who we'll hear from here in a little bit, and other past Fred Frese lectures about living with schizophrenia are valuable for the advancement of treatment and changes in attitudes towards people who have a mental illness diagnosis. It's important that we learn from their experience and continue this pursuit of hope, advocacy, and recovery. Fred Frese spoke around the world, delivering more than 2,000 invited presentations on serious mental illness in some 48 states, as well as Canada, Japan, Australia, and Europe. Today, in fact, I know online we have with us 21 states in our virtual audience, to include Puerto Rico, which speaks to the impact Fred had as an advocate and philosopher of mental health. Fred taught medical students here at NeoMed about lived experience of recovery from schizophrenia years ago. His impact on NeoMed students and graduates were memorable and far-reaching. Fred changed perceptions about people living with schizophrenia and other serious mental disorders by educating and showing that people affected by schizophrenia can lead meaningful, independent lives in the community. PEG's Foundation is grateful to the NeoMed Coordinating Centers of Excellence and want to, with them, honor the legacy of Dr. Fred Frese and his wife, Dr. Penny Frese, with this annual lecture series by inviting people living with schizophrenia with serious mental illness, like Fred, or their family members, like Penny, supporting each other to inspire us all with their stories of hope and recovery. Today, there's also a special display. If you saw out front, Fred had a pretty prolific, what might be a word to say, book collection. His own personal book collection was donated to NeoMed by Penny, and I think it was one of the ways Penny was hoping to exit some stuff from the house after we lost Fred. But you'll see some of those, a selection of those books out in the auditorium, along with a lot of handwritten notes, and it's essentially Fred's archive. A lot of important facts, highlights, and research in the books that he had collected. The whole collection will be on display in the library for future learners and professors to gain their own insights. Be sure to check that out before you go today. And I want to also make one comment. I think I say this every time I have the opportunity to introduce the lecturer. One of the greatest honors of my life was when Penny asked me to eulogize Fred. It was a heady experience. Fred's life was a miracle. And super grateful that you're here, Penny, and continue on this journey with us. Now, I'd like to introduce today's, hey, no pressure, Brandon, by the way, right? I'd like to introduce today's doctors, Fred and Penny Frese Lecturer, Brandon Staglin. Brandon, as One Mind's co-founder and chief advocacy and engagement officer, Brandon channels his deep experience in leadership, advocacy, and personal schizophrenia recovery to drive mental health innovation and community engagement to heal lives. With years of successful advocacy for science-driven advances in early intervention for youth facing severe mental illness, he's emerged as a champion for the elevation of lived experience-based guidance to shape the future of mental health systems. He has published numerous articles in well-known journals and earned numerous advocacy awards. Brandon has served on guiding councils of global, national, and regional influence, including for the World Economic Forum, the National Institute of Mental Health, the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health, the State of California, and Stop Stigma Together. He's earned a Master's of Science in Healthcare Administration and Interprofessional Leadership from UCSF, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Engineering Sciences and Anthropology from Dartmouth College. In his personal time, he enjoys playing guitar and spending quality of time with his wife and animals. And I want to say that I first met Brandon through actually through Kennedy Forum, and where we had engaged Patrick Kennedy to come to NeoMed to help us announce a grant, and I got to know Patrick. And I think I met Brandon at a Kennedy Forum event, but I'm super happy that in the year 2000, right before the pandemic started, we created a thing, and Brandon was part of that, called the CEO Alliance of Mental Health, and got to know Brandon personally through that. And the unified vision, Brandon was one of the most significant architects of bringing those 15 different disparate and sometimes historically cantankerous and not always getting along organizations like the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association, Treatment Advocacy Center, and NAMI National to the table, and to really collectively work together to figure out how we make lives better for folks that experience serious mental illness. Brandon's a friend. He's a mentor to me. And as we talked about last night with Penny, there's this kind of neat moment here where the legacy of Fred is passed on, where we have the next generation of advocates, of folks that live with schizophrenia and demonstrate to us all that mental illness, you can recover. Without further ado, Brandon Staglin.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Hello, good morning or afternoon, as the case may be. I'm from the West Coast, so it's morning there, still on that time. I want to thank PEGS Foundation, Northeast Ohio Medical University, for inviting me to deliver the Dr. Fred and Penny Frese Lecture to you today. And I want to thank all of you for coming out to watch and be a part of this experience today. I'll talk with you about transforming mental health through lived experience-based leadership. As a schizophrenia survivor and co-founder of a nationally influential mental health nonprofit, I believe all people facing mental illness, no matter how severe, deserve the chance to thrive. And I think you'll join me in asking, why isn't that the common outcome? I believe our society must invest much attention in reforming its mental health systems to support people with severe mental illness, listening not only to scientists and innovators, but also to people with lived experience. If we can embrace the discoveries that science reveals, alongside the wisdom of genuine experiences, I believe we can reform mental health systems and bring thriving within common reach for people we love. We all need to be a part of this story. Warning, today's discussion may transform your perspective on how you might influence the mental health system. We'll cover a lot of good ground. I'll tell you about my experiences and what I've learned from them, and how I'm currently leading programs at One Mind to harness experiences like mine and others, perhaps like yours, to transform mental health systems across science, innovation, and workplace practices. And then we'll talk about a great call to action for all of us to hopefully stand up and heed and get behind. And then we'll have Q&A. Sound good? Okay, let's roll. So by way of introduction, as a kid, I was a big science fiction fan. I loved reading works by the great authors like Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke. And those works and programs like Star Trek inspired me to form a dream to one day build the world's first starship and bring to reality the potential for humanity to climb out of this cradle that we call Earth and one day find a better future for ourselves amongst the stars. I was also inspired by this poem, which I first encountered in a high school English class. You may be familiar with this poem by Walt Whitman. Let's read it together. It's not only influential on my early life, but it's relevant for our discussion today, as you'll see. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs of figures were arranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out by myself, I wandered out by myself and from time to time in the mystical moist night air, looked up in perfect silence at the stars. What is this poem about? What does this mean to you? I believe this poem is about the power of lived experiences to boldly take us where science cannot take us alone. We all have the power from our experiences and our expertise to drive mental health systems forward and advance them toward better care for people we love. I'll share a bit about my experiences now and what I've learned from them. Can acceptance, commitment, and innovation care enable recovery? Let's find out. So since a terrifying summer evening 35 years ago, I have lived as 15 million other Americans live today with a severe mental illness. This image shows my impression of what a psychotic episode felt like to me all those years ago. I drew it on a computer about 20 years ago using a mouse and a keyboard. They didn't have AI then. I used my own AI, active intelligence. People with active imagination, excuse me. People with schizophrenia often have active imaginations, and I was one of those. So I think this image captures well the terror and the bewilderment that I felt as I felt my identity, my self-esteem, my future get sucked into oblivion by a tsunami of dread and delusions. And as I woke up every morning in the days that followed, I knew that my task was simply to find that half myself that I had lost and to live through one more day. And I faced unrelenting existential terror. I was convinced that demons were lurking behind every corner, behind every bush, every tree, waiting to pounce on me and drag my soul off to hell to burn for all eternity if I ever made the slightest moral mistake. I still remember whenever I defy something my dad wanted me to do, hearing those demons cackle and feeling the prickling on the back of my neck. I also remember whenever I do something kind, say for my sister, hearing the angel song resonate in my chest and my forehead. Those were terrifying days, and I was on edge every moment of every day, and it was as if the fear would never go away. And so I knew that I couldn't handle that fight much longer. So I engaged in the care system. And the experience that I had was emblematic of that, of so many people throughout the care system today. I experienced discrimination, both police officers and some care providers in the form of hospital staff treated me occasionally with disdain and subjugation. And this enhanced my self-stigma and shame and caused me to resist seeking and participating in care for months after my diagnosis. Once I found a psychiatrist that I could trust and engage with, it took us about 6 months of experimenting with different treatments by trial and error until we finally found one that enabled me to start to stabilize and quell my psychosis. And those were desperate times. I was skirting suicide that entire time. This may sound familiar to those of you who have a loved one with severe mental illness. Debilitating side effects from the treatments were plaguing me for years thereafter. I experienced drowsiness and difficulty paying attention, weight gain, and these side effects were putting a damper on my social life and my career. So I decided to quit them. Terrible choice, as you might guess. I had a devastating relapse. I had to quit my job as an engineer, forfeit my graduate school admission, and retreat to a psychiatric hospital. It took me much longer to recover from the second episode than the first. And it was a crushing blow to my morale. And for the next year and a half, I had to live close to my psychiatrist to be able to see him twice a week as a step down from being in the hospital. And that year and a half was dreadfully lonely because I lived alone in an apartment in San Francisco with no social skills and no friends, and I couldn't make any friends. So sadly, these conditions are all too common for people with severe mental illness. And it's continuing to plague people struggling to reclaim their lives. We need to do something to reform mental health systems to help people thrive again. So I'll tell you what ultimately helped me to thrive. So as I began to grow and tame the illness with help from my psychiatrist, my family, my loving family, my friends, and my community, I still wrestled with the idea that I was falling far behind my friends and my peers in life experiences, accomplishments, and maturity. And this brought me a source of shame for quite a while. Until one day I had the great fortune to encounter a radical idea. I read Ellen Sacks's beautiful memoir, The Center Cannot Hold: My Journey Through Madness. And in it, I read about how she had struggled with schizophrenia for so long until one day she understood that by accepting the illness, it enabled her to move on and start to live a better life. So I thought, what if I let my mind go there? What if I stop resisting this idea that I had a severe mental illness that I'd have to manage? So I tried it. It was as the weight of a garbage truck had been lifted from my shoulders. Suddenly, I could embrace what I needed to do to manage my condition. Suddenly, I could move on to do things that I cared about in my life. It was a turning point. Shortly thereafter, I had another turning point, a great opportunity to engage in an innovative treatment experimental study. There is a neuroplasticity-based treatment, which they do offer actually at the Best Center, which we heard about earlier, called cognitive remediation training. In the 1990s was the very early days of this mode of treatment. So what it does is it engages the brain's neural pathways and helps them rebuild themselves in response to targeted and progressively more difficult exercises. So as I did these exercises on a computer, an hour a day for 5 days a week for 2 months, I could feel the benefits accruing. Basically, within 6 months, I was enjoying time with friends again. I wasn't zoning out in conversation. I could respond appropriately when spoken to and be appreciated for what I was saying. And moreover, I really enjoyed being with friends again and returned to work within 6 months of doing the training. What a relief to start to engage in life again. Since then, I've been a proponent of thoughtful, evidence-based treatments for innovative treatments for schizophrenia, other severe mental illnesses. And I've continued to build my social abilities through practicing them, continuing to build that muscle that neuroplasticity engages. Continue to grow through songwriting, public speaking, blogging, webcasting, and it's helped me to write my own life story, literally. What a thrill it was when in 2017, I was able to perform an original song I wrote about schizophrenia recovery called Horizons Left to Chase, and hear the audience sing along with their own joy. This picture shows me on stage at One Mind's Music Festival in 2017. Lyle Levitt lent me his guitar to play the song, and he's such a generous guy. That was the highlight of my advocacy career. And since then, I found that musical practice continues to build my ability to feel motivated to excel and stay emotionally stable. Soon thereafter, Joshua Gordon, then director of the National Institute of Mental Health, invited me to serve as a council member of the National Institute of Mental Health, advised the council on grant applications for new research, and also advised the Accelerating Medicines Partnership in Schizophrenia as a steering committee member. The Accelerating Medicines Partnership, or AMP-SCITS, is a global public-private partnership that is harnessing science to study about 2,000 young people in the clinical high-risk stages of schizophrenia to lay the rails to develop new medications to treat young people in the earliest stages before they develop the full-blown illness. Imagine if somebody starting to develop schizophrenia could be offered an evidence-based innovative treatment. Could they stay out of the hospital? Could they stay in touch with their relationships, their friends, their work, their school? Wouldn't that be a win? This is the goal of the AMP Schizophrenia. I've been proud to have been a part of it. And also grateful to have the opportunity to, after I earned my Master of Science in Healthcare Administration from UCSF, been appointed to serve as president of One Mind in 2018. And in this role, we're able to double the size of the organization and launch important new programs like the One Mind Accelerator, which you see the 2025 cohort here. This program enables entrepreneurs to develop new treatments for people with severe mental illness and get them out into the community. And it's influenced about 1 million lives since it got started 2 years ago. Very proud of the work we've done there. And proud of the amazing team that made this work possible. I learned a lot from the experience leading One Mind for 6 years about my strengths and liabilities as a leader. And also that the organization, with the great team that it has amazing potential to grow beyond what my family and I started so long ago. So today, One Mind is driving science, accelerating innovation, and transforming workplaces through 3 major programs, all undergirded by lived experience, as we'll see very soon. The first program, the One Mind Academy, helps rising star scientists to accelerate their discoveries and their impact on the community by becoming better leaders for the field. The One Mind Accelerator helps entrepreneurs to rapidly scale their startups, to help more people out in the community and achieve financial success for their companies. But it's mainly all about impact for people. And then the One Mind at Work program is helping business leaders to drive change within their organizations to help their employees with their mental health and organizational performance. So I'll tell you a bit about more. You'll hear more about these programs as I go through my talk. So what have I learned from recovery and illness of schizophrenia? These are my takeaways. I'll be interested to hear about yours later on. But first of all, engagement is key. Both medicine and moreover personal engagement and social engagement are incredibly important for recovery from schizophrenia. Science can open doors. That science-driven innovations can offer hope and healing to people with severe mental illness, and that they're worth supporting. And that adversity can be a guide. That experience by expertise can help guide innovation and science forward to help more people with their recovery. So as I mentioned, these are my takeaways, but you probably have your own takeaways from your own experience. Many of you have had a loved one or yourself have been through a mental illness. And I invite you to think about what you've learned from your experiences as we go through the rest of the talk, because they may be vital to transforming mental health systems. So I'll talk about what I'm currently leading at One Mind in the One Mind Lived Experience Initiative. Can a network of committed advocates change mental health? Let's find out. So we know our society is facing a crisis of mental illness, and societal systems are struggling to support people facing severe mental illness. For example, only about 10% of young people experiencing psychosis for the first time have access to the gold standard of treatment, like they provide at the Best Center, for example. And this is compared to 70% of people with cancer being able to access the gold standard of care for cancer. So this is an unfortunate disparity. Even though about 60% of people with severe mental illness would like to work, only less than a quarter are competitively employed. Another disparity that needs rectifying. And as a result of these lack of access, lack of opportunities, only about 22% of people with severe mental illness achieve full recovery. So we need to change this. But let's start by asking why. Why is our mental health system in such a state today? I believe a large part of the problem is distrust and discrimination. We'll talk about this in a moment. To paraphrase Dr. Thomas Insel, patients are not buying what doctors are selling. So we're facing a crisis of distrust and discrimination. We know that about 2/3 of people with mental illness have avoided seeking care because they distrust that the mental health system has their best interests in mind or has the power to help them, and or fear discrimination by their employers, their peers, sometimes even their clinicians, their families. And this is a major issue. Does this resonate? Have you ever felt marginalized for your mental health status or that of a loved one? Have you ever doubted that the mental health system could help you or your loved one? I have. So how do we heal this rift in the mental health system? We partner with people with lived experience. I'll explain how. Research has shown that partnering with people with lived experience can really enhance care solutions. It can bring better care, better outcomes, more hope, and moreover, acceptance, decrease stigma, and enhance trust. So by harnessing these principles of research, we have launched the One Mind Lived Experience Initiative as of 2024. What we aim to do is to build bridges of empathy between societal leaders and people with lived experience in order to restore trust and dispel discrimination, help people with lived experience integrate into communities, including as leaders, to help leaders understand the genuine needs of their communities and serve them better, and help people in those communities better access those supports because they have more trust in them. When you co-create solutions with people with mental illness, the community trusts them much more implicitly. So we've launched a trio of programs to heal mental health systems from the ground up. The One Mind Lived Experience Council, which I'll talk about in a moment. The One Mind Launchpad, which is for helping young workers with SMI find supportive environments in employers. to grow their careers. And finally, the One Mind Project Phoenix, I'll give you a sneak peek of that. It's in the early ideation phases, but it's about restoring trust in science. First, the One Mind Lived Experience Council. So to dispel discrimination and restore trust in mental health systems, in 2024, I launched the council to bring together what is now 6 advocates, and we're continuing to grow, plus surrounded by a community advisory network, which I'll mention more about soon, to leverage our personal and professional experiences to guide leaders to prioritize the genuine mental health needs of their communities and thereby create much more inclusive and effective mental health systems. And we've had great success in 2024 in advising leaders in this way, such that in 2025, we've guided the entrepreneurs in the One Mind Accelerator program to incorporate more people with lived experience into their programs and their work, and to hone their strategies to target our genuine needs. We've also have plans to engage business leaders and scientists throughout the rest of the year to guide them similarly. And we're continuing to expand and make an impact. We've grown tangible impact across 3 major sectors as of this month. We've advised 19 startups. We've advised more than 50 scientists and more than 100 business leaders, and guided them toward more compassionate, inclusive, and effective solutions for mental health care for their communities. And I'm proud to say that we've had a 100% uptake rate. Essentially, all of our clients have integrated what we've guided them to do into their work for better work they can do. That's impact. Excited about that. If you're interested in participating in this work, we have, as I mentioned, a community advisory network, which is about 40 people in the network currently. We'd like able to add more. So if you're a person who's experienced mental illness or are a family member of somebody who has, and you've done advocacy for mental health, feel free to talk to me after our talk, and I'll be happy to discuss with you what opportunities might be available. Next, the One Mind Launchpad. So this program was born out of the realization that people with lived experience of severe mental illness and employers, both major and small, stand a lot to gain from one another if they can work together for mutual growth. We know that we're now developing this program to empower employers to hire, retain, and develop the careers of employees who face severe mental illness. And leading the research under my supervision is a great scientist named Priya Karal, and together we have discovered a lot about the landscape and formed a preliminary roadmap for the program. I'll share that with you now. So we understand that, of course, people with severe mental illness have unique work needs. When I was working as an engineer in the Silicon Valley, I never disclosed about my schizophrenia. I thought that I'd be fired or ostracized. And when I had a relapse, it was just, there was nowhere I could turn. This was emblematic of the needs of people with severe mental illness in its own way. People with SMI face low employment rates and obstacles to growth in their careers. We know that there's a lot of unfortunate bullying and scapegoating that takes place and a lack of support for their needs. So there is a model of supported employment that is widely used today called individualized placement and support. This is the most used model to help people with severe mental illness find jobs, and emphasizes rapid job placement and support for the employer. And unfortunately, there are many roadblocks to its implementation, which include a lack of access. Only about 2% of people with mental illness can access this mode of support, and a lack of investment pre-implementation by the companies that are using it, as well as not enough communication between practitioners of this mode of treatment, which centers of excellence like that at NeoMed can help to dispel, hopefully in the future. Unfortunately, also the job placements that are offered are not growth-oriented often enough. They tend to be jobs in which people come in and they cycle out too quickly. And this figure illustrates that. This may look familiar if you ever had a family member or a loved one who's tried to find work with a severe mental illness. So too often people search for jobs. With some support, they can find jobs. They can maintain the jobs, but then disruption almost inevitably comes due to health issues or job stagnation or lack of support in the workplace. So what do we do about this vicious cycle? we can disrupt it. So we conducted about about 15 interviews with people with lived experience, clinicians, and employers so far in our first phase, preliminarily, of research for this program. We learned lots of interesting things, including 6 major themes that emerged on people's experiences with employment with severe mental illness. We learned that people with SMI have internal resources to navigate the workplace by, say, sharing stories about their experiences. This helps to reframe people's perceptions of them in a more positive light, framing it as a strength, for example. Accommodations for people with SMI, unfortunately, are static. They don't evolve with the employee's evolving needs because there's not enough communication with the manager. We learned that disclosure is scary. There's a lot of pain points around disclosure, especially in today's environment. There is a current lack of understanding and respect. There's way too often bullying that occurs for people with SMI in the workplace, or scapegoating. And career trajectories are way too often limited by their manager's expectations of the employee. Like, the manager all too often doubts that an employee with SMI has the capacity to tackle difficult situations, to grow in their careers, and so they don't get those promotions they deserve. So we did identify, fortunately, 4 keys to a new approach. First, shift the culture. When leaders of organizations can understand the true needs of people with severe mental illness, they can shift the culture toward one of more inclusion and belonging, and that will undergird the rest of the changes that can take place. People with SMI need to feel safe to disclose, but moreover, welcome by their coworkers. Resource navigation is important. People with SMI must understand what resources are available to help them thrive in the workplace, and the impact of using those resources on their careers. And growth opportunities must be collaborative. So when managers and employees can co-create their growth trajectory, that can lead to good futures for people and for their growth in the workplace. So we can break the cycle. By offering support at critical junctures, we can achieve supported growth and thriving for people with SMI in the workplace. And a one-line program aims to do that. So a fully realized program that we're planning to launch in 2026 as a pilot with the first phase will help them, not only the employee, but also their managers, their coworkers, the leaders of the company, and also society, ultimately, to be much more inclusive and empowering for people in the workplace. We'll start it with a pilot amongst one-minded work members to shift the culture within leadership of workplaces through storytelling. So we'll start engaging with employers to pilot it later this year. If you have experience with severe mental illness in the workplace, or have tried to work, or know somebody who has with severe mental illness tried to work and experienced challenges or even success, talk to me about it after our talk, and you may have an opportunity to participate in our research for the next phase coming up. Finally, One Mind Project Phoenix. As I mentioned, this is a sneak peek of an idea we have for a project that has garnered a lot of support from other stakeholders in the system. We've identified that, unfortunately, there's too much doubt in mental health science and innovation for its capacity to help people with severe mental illness. And this doubt appears to be growing. What can we do to help people feel comfortable engaging with science-based innovations for care? So by connecting advocates with lived experience and scientists with trusted influencers, we will aim to convene and launch a movement to influence policymakers and the public to feel comfortable and trusting science and innovation, to enable more funding to be channeled into science and innovation, and to encourage community, to feel comfortable using the innovations that come out of science, and how it can help them heal their lives. So there are 5 stages we envision for this program, from investigating the landscape, understanding different perspectives people have on science, whether positive or negative, and why they feel that way. Then using that data to craft messaging and identify messengers. Messengers are incredibly important to help people feel comfortable in science again, to align on a convening in which we will orient to the strategies we developed, to advocate with legislators and launch a campaign next year, and to iterate, continuously improve this program over time through evaluation and improvement. So that's the One Mind Lived Experience initiative. What is our challenge today as stakeholders in the mental health system, as people with lived experience, as experts of in our own way? It's not an abstract one. It's something that hits home for all of us. You know people who've lived with severe mental illness. This may be somebody close to you. You've been there with them in their darkest moments. You've been there with them as they've cried out in terror, as they've cried in frustration, as they've sighed with despair. And what did they do in those dark moments? They kept going. Their courage and tenacity inspires you to move mountains. And you know what? You have kept going too. Your work and the care that you've given people with severe mental illness is essential. It is vital to their well-being, and you've done a lot of amazing work to help people. There's a wave of interest in harnessing lived experiences and science to drive innovation forward and to reform healthcare systems for mental health. We can all be a part of this wave. Are you ready to engage? How can you participate? So there are opportunities to volunteer to advise One Mind and our stakeholders through the One Mind Community Advisory Network, as I mentioned earlier, or to participate in our research if you have lived experience. You can apply to join our programs if you're a scientist or an entrepreneur. You're welcome to apply to our Rising Star Award program, which is currently accepting applications through later this month. Or if you're an entrepreneur, to apply to join our One Mind Accelerator cohorts later this year. And you're also, if you feel so moved, welcome to become a One Mind contributor. After 30 years, we've influenced 30 million lives, thanks to our contributors and philanthropists and foundations and corporations that have so generously supported our work. Imagine being a part of that. Are you ready to help our society help people with severe mental illness? I believe by working together, we can bring thriving within reach for people we love. Let's do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Feel free to contact me using the information on the slide, or happy to share my contact information after the talk. Thank you.